Good day everyone, this is me again, Jobily Ontoy, and I'm back for another video, and for today's discussion, we will be talking about choral speaking or reading. Do you know that poetry is better to enjoy when it is read aloud than silently? Yes, you heard it right, because if you read a poem silently, you will miss the musical and rhythmic quality and perhaps its meaning. To read poetry aloud, it demands from the reader a keen imagination and a delicate accuracy of interpretation. To acquire precision of interpretation, the reader should read the poem aloud and try to get the general mood or feeling. One catches the melody and the movement as he reads the poem aloud. Reading the poem aloud helps train your ear, improve your diction, and your taste for poetry. Now, let's define what is choral reading or speaking. Choral reading or speaking is the interpretation of poetry by several voices speaking as one. It is the group interpretation of poetry for the purpose of sharing enjoyment and for increasing enjoyment of it. Choral reading involves the use of book or script. Many in the Philippines and even our ancestors participated in choral speaking in church and at home, especially reciting the prayers and the rosary. Now, let's move on to the uses of choral speaking. Choral speaking can be used in school at all levels. It is an activity that children and adults of any age can enjoy. For children of preschool and kindergarten level, Mother Goose rhymes, nonsense verses, and jingles with a very marked rhythm can be used. Children in elementary grades would enjoy poems with narrative interest, vivid imagery, and strong rhythm, while older children would prefer poems they could interpret with feelings. So what are poems suitable for choral speaking? Well, these are poems which are universal in tone. Poems which vary in mood, content, and type. Poems that are rich in auditory images. Poems with marked rhythm, and poems that can be used with three voices. Now, let's proceed to the types of choral speaking arrangement. There are four basic types of choral arrangement. First is refrain. This type is used with poetry which contains lines or verses which are repeated. The second type of choral arrangement is sequence. This is best employed in the poems which develop its thought into a strong climax or which two lines are cumulative in response. The solo voices and the semi-choruses take turns in saying the lines, and then the interchorus enters to build a climax and an impressive finale. The third type is the antiphonal. The antiphon is a traditional form of reciting biblical verses. In this type of arrangement, one group responds to another. Children with light voices to another group with dark voices, or children with high voices to another group with low voices. This is the most dramatic arrangement because it makes use of contrasting voices. It is good for poems which have questions and answers. The fourth type is unison. These poems expressing strong and powerful emotions are best interpreted by the whole speaking group rather than by part groupings or the semi-choruses. This is the most difficult type since it requires the ability to speak together at the same time with proper timing, proper control, and volume of voice. Let's move on to the kinds of voices or semi-choruses. There are types of voices used in choral speaking or reading. First is light or high voices. This is for reading or saying lines that suggest fun, happiness, and brightness. The second type is dark or low voices. This is for saying lines that suggest mystery, terror, sadness, and solemnity. And the third type is medium voices. This is for blending all voices, for relating the narrative, for introducing the characters, and for giving explanations. So what are the steps in choral speaking? First, read the poem selected for its content. The teacher or conductor reads the poem in class or group. If copies can be furnished to the group, they can concentrate on the content of the poem. Second, determine the type and the mood of the poem. The mood of the poem will determine the kind of voices or choruses to be used. Third, understand the meaning of the poem. The mood of the poem will determine the kind of voices of choruses to be used. Fourth, know the rhythmical nature of the poem, the tempo and the movement in the poem. Fifth, read the poem with children. Spot punctuation faults. After pointing out punctuation faults, show how diction can be improved. 6. Repeat the selection together. Try several interpretations in order to decide on the best arrangement. Then, apportion the parts and lines to the children. Then let them say the poem without your help. 8. Make sure that the voices blend properly. See to it that no one voice could be heard above the others or trailing behind the others. And lastly, avoid sing-song recitation. Now, let's proceed to the values of choral speaking or reading. First, it enhances a greater appreciation. Second, it enriches the art-like experience by extending imagination and sympathy. Third, it develops good speech habits, articulation, and enunciation. It develops self-confidence and poise, and it develops cooperation and social understanding. So it is important to develop your love for choral speaking and reading because it will give you a lot of benefits. So that ends my discussion. I hope you learned something from it. This is Jubilee Antoy. See you again next meeting.